All right, my man, Bill. Hey, what a great situation that was. Congratulations, by the way, on being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame last week. What an amazing scene that was. Tell me how that felt to be a part of all that.
Well, having you there, Erik, was so critical to me. And I mean, what we went through and to maintain the relationship for 40 years speaks to the type of person you are and the impact you've had on me and the impact you had on my career. And when I was alerted to this honor, I started thinking about all those along the journey, if you will. Yeah. And, you were speaking about a journey with Tyler Shutt earlier in the podcast. And I'm thinking, that's Erik Kramer. I mean, I remember when you took over and people were wondering, gosh, how's he going to handle the pressure and blah, blah, blah. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Here's a guy that didn't get any D1 offers out of high school, played junior college, contacted D1 programs, goes to NC State, rewrites the record books, doesn't get drafted, goes to Atlanta as a replacement player during the strike in 87, establishes a relationship with June Jones, which was critical. And then years later, writes every team in the NFL for a shot. And June was with us at the time. Yeah. So that's how it all works in life, let alone football. And it's funny because I remember thinking, this guy's, everything's pressure. We get that. But the pressure you experience is based on your body of work up to that point. And you've been through it all. Yeah. And I think that's how in your game in Indianapolis, you had a couple of nicknames, including one as in brass. Yeah. You knew to handle, situations. And then the other thing, to have you there and then to have Matthew Stafford come, it was sort of like my two guys, my two quarterbacks. My first one and my last one. And I remember telling a few people about Matthew's first, appearance and how a different route than what you took. Yeah. Number one pick overall, all that. And Dante Culpepper was on our roster that year. And there was so much media, if not public sentiment. Oh, you got to rest Matthew for a year. He's going to get shell shocked, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like shaking my head thinking, here's a guy that started as a freshman at one of the top high school programs in the state of Texas, led him to a state championship, starts in the SEC as a freshman in the SEC. And at that age, just like what you went through, it's all relative. Yeah. So I knew you were going to be prepared. I knew Matthew was going to be prepared. And your points about Tyler, resonated with me thinking about you and thinking about Matthew. But let me say this. One of my greatest joys this past week was taking a step back and just looking at everybody and all the enjoyment, the love, the interaction, the smiles. And I was so happy that, friends from when I was 4 and 5 years old could meet you. And it was, I'm full of goosebumps now. It was just one of the most incredible few days of genuine people and people that matter and people that get it and people that I love. So it's, I'm still up here pretty high.
Well, I can imagine because sitting from where I was, I got to meet not only, I've known your kids, but then I got to meet your brother, Mike, and then your mom. And meet the friends you just mentioned that you've known since you were a kid. Yeah. And walking in, there was a dinner that Wednesday night. Yeah. And we were, Anna and I, my girlfriend, we were in a separate room. And then we come back into the room you were in. And you were basically holding court there, thanking everybody and telling some great stories. And it just hit me, what an impactful moment in time this must have been for you, because here you are, like right now, deflecting all of the attention onto me and my background and Matthew Stafford. Yet you're the one that was in the middle of all that and being honored with some of the greats of the game. And it took me back a little bit. Like, can you think back to that, those days, as you just mentioned, back in the early 90s, maybe that 91 season? Anything there that stood out to you as you're looking back now about season and some of the things that transpired? In addition, of course, to the tragedy of Mike Utley.
Right. Well, let me preface it so I don't forget it. So I get a message this morning from someone we both know, Dan Henning. And Dan was a head coach at Atlanta, a head coach at San Diego. He was an offensive coordinator with Erik's last few years with the Lions. I worked with Dan when I was with the Redskins.
Right.
And I've told some Mr. Cook stories, right? During that time. And Dan's message was, congratulations, Bill, but all the work you did during Super Bowl 17 week made you worthy of this honor. And I know Mr. Cook would agree. About taking you back. But of course I remember, those early 90s but I say this with profound sincerity. You helped me as much as, and all those people along the journey. We helped each other. Yeah. And what we were going through, we weren't that far away in age. And I tell people this, I wouldn't have been there without those of you that truly were along the journey with me. And in that first year where you really took over in 91 after Rodney had his injury, in the way you were unfazed, Erik. I mean, you were just so calm and cool and collected. Not saying there wasn't pressure, there always is, but the way you handled the team, I'm sure some of your teammates, they knew you, but they didn't know you as the starter, as the leader, and it was amazing, and it was wonderful, and that became our greatest regular season record in team history, only surpassed by what the Lions did a couple years ago. Yeah. And then this past season. But, I remember going into, we started 6-2, had a couple tough road losses, 6-4. And then we come back for a critical game against the Rams. You throw a touchdown pass to put us up and win the game. And on the same play, Mike is injured. Mike Utley is injured. And it changed the whole tenor of everything. And back at that time, the advancements in spinal cord injuries weren't what they are today. Thank God for today. Sorry, tragic they weren't there then.
Yeah.
But to imagine leading a team like you did with, there were so many sidebars to that season, the record, the playoffs, so many things. And then Mike, and having that burden on all the players. And then we go to Minnesota the week before Thanksgiving, and you and Barry had a great game. You had a great game. And so now we're coming home for national TV. John Madden, Pat Summerall, Thanksgiving. What a meaning that word and day took on as we prepared for that game. And I remember getting on the plane, and you immediately start preparing because it's such a short week for Thanksgiving. And I don't know if it was divine intervention or what, but something hit me. Okay, national TV, the whole world is watching, let alone the whole country. And honestly, one thing that Joe Gibbs taught me, or I learned from Joe in the 3 years I was in Washington, was that everything matters and nothing's more important than team. Nothing. Mm. And everything we do as an organization, my department does, if it affects the team, if it affects or touches Erik Kramer, it better be right, no matter what it is. So you try to instill that in your staff to literally ask that question. Okay, does this touch the team? How can it touch the team? And it better be right. So I start thinking, and I think, how awesome would it be, for all the right reasons, certainly primarily for Mike Utley, if we could send a message to him before the kickoff. And so I started writing handwritten, I wish I still had it, a note about, hey, Mike, we know you were listening. We want you to know you're as big a part of this team today as you ever have been, and you always will be, blah, blah, blah. So I'm getting goosebumps, Erik. I mean, how many years later that this can affect you?
That's life, though.
It's
life.
True.
Yep.
So, but I also, I hope this doesn't sound inappropriate, but I also thought for my team, what it would do for my team and the crowd and everybody.
Yeah,
had been touched by Mike's misfortune. So I wrote it out, and then I went to Lomas, and he was resistant at first. But I just told him, I said, Lomas, look, you've been here the longest with Barry, and you're a leader, and it's one of your brothers on the O-line that you're speaking to, and convinced Lomas to do it. And then I knew CBS would love it, right? I knew. Now, I'm not sure
just an intuition.
Yeah, I'm not sure Mike Dick and the Bears would love it. Although knowing what I know of Mike and certainly the McCaskey family and the organization, they were awesome. So I got permission, or I called Bob Stenner, the producer for the game, and Sandy Grossman, the director, and gave them the idea. Of course, they loved it.
Yeah.
And then we did what we had from a timing standpoint. And then for Lomas to share that message to a national TV audience, most importantly to Mike, because we knew he was listening and watching the game.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you remember, but we got the opening kickoff and Mel Gray went like 50 yards. The crowd was so jacked. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, we won the game and went into won the division and had an incredible. You were. I can't even still to this day come up with how incredible you were in the Dallas playoff game. I mean, if the country didn't know you before that game, everybody knew you after that game. And then we had the championship game in Washington, and it still grates me that people don't realize how close that game was going into halftime.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 17-10. And having worked there, I know what that crowd can be like. Right. RFK was magical for those teams.
It was.
Just great memories.
Well, Bill, and I really appreciate you kind of going back. And obviously, all these thoughts and recollections of yours are right on the tip of your tongue. Yeah. And for all these years, though, what do you think it's been for you that has allowed you to remain, to first build the trust that you have for over so many people over so many years, myself included? Yeah. What do you think it's been that's allowed you to become and then stay such an integral part in people's lives?
Well, you said it, Erik. It's trust. And I learned that from my father and my mother without question, how to treat people. And if I didn't have your trust or the players' trust or the coach's trust, it wouldn't have been so wonderful, I believe. And I don't think what's more important in life, let alone your profession, let alone football. And I would try to treat my players. Now it's different with you because we weren't that far away in age, but as my tenure and career moved on, I'd look at my players like they were my children, my sons. In fact, when we drafted Matthew, he was the same age as Billy. So literally, and there's going to be experiences that will either secure that trust or harm it. And, I always tried to do that and make it clear to the players. And in doing that, it wasn't always where I was going to take the player's side on anything or the team's side on anything or a coach. I knew that there was a right thing in every situation. Do the right thing. do what's best for the team, the organization. Because when you do that, ultimately everybody involved benefits.
Yeah.
And I would always,
that's a pretty good guiding principle, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And we went through, as you know, a lot of head coaches over the years. and
a lot of assistant coaches.
And a lot of coordinators.
Yeah.
Weren't you a coordinator one year?
I stepped in there on a part-time basis. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember it happened multiple times where we'd hire a new head coach, and you're getting to know each other. It's kind of hectic. The first few days you have the opening press conference, which is a long, busy day. And then invariably we would end up back at the practice facility. And I would make a point to stay with the head coach until he was about ready to leave and just ask for a few minutes. And one thing I said to each and every one of them is, I just ask you for an opportunity to earn your trust. And I will give you the same respect to earn mine, because we have to have that. Because, as a quarterback, Erik, you know it, I found myself oftentimes like a head trainer might, like an equipment guy might. I'm in a situation between a head coach and an assistant coach, a head coach and a player and a player, a player and assistant coach. And, so knowing the individuals involved in those situations, if they can trust you and I can trust them, we're going to come out on the right side of whatever we were dealing with.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the how to build trust, earn it, and just put it on display, and how to become really your guiding principle in life. It'll take you a long ways. One thing I wanted to ask you about, getting back to the Hall of Fame scenario, is what was that phone call like for you?
Well, I was so emotional. And I was actually in a car with Marisa, my girlfriend. We were on the way, I believe, to Chicago for her son, Joseph, for an appointment. And we pulled off the road, and Erik, honestly, I don't know if there's a word to describe it, because you immediately are humbled, you're appreciative, you're emotional. And then I just started going back to the earliest memories I had of family, friends, football. I had a friend there last week that I met when we were 4 years old.
Right.
Friends ever since, played sports together. And truly, I think everybody along the way, ultimately, you're at the top of the list. And you think of all the life turns and changes and timing that if they went different, who knows what would have happened. My mom, I mentioned her and my dad earlier. I wasn't a great athlete by any stretch. I played baseball the longest, but I played football my sophomore year, got hurt, a knee injury, and then beginning of spring workouts practice, I hurt it again, and I had to go to the hospital, came home that night, and a good friend of mine came over to see me, and he had an application for the school paper. And he basically said, if you're going to be hurt all the time and you can't play sports, write about it. I'm like, yeah. So, Erik, I put that application on my dresser in my bedroom. I wasn't thinking about it. I've loved sports my whole life, but you know how we are when we're young. We have these illusions of grandeur.
Sure.
So I had gone to bed probably earlier than normal. My mom wakes me up, and it's probably 9 o'clock, 9:30. And she goes, Billy, this application is due tomorrow. You haven't filled it out. So, okay, Mom. So I wake up, fill it out, and you had to write a couple stories. It was probably an hour of work.
Yeah.
So I did that, gave the application to the faculty advisor, whomever, the next day, and I got the job. And Erik, that job led to me becoming the sports editor and the editor-in-chief of the paper. It led to, because there was a journalism workshop at Ohio University that summer.
Yeah.
So I went to that, fell in love with Ohio University, one of the best journalism communication schools in the country. Went there. That experience led to internships in Pittsburgh. And it also led me to realize Ohio U had the best sports administration program in the country. Applied and got accepted there. That led me to Duke, where I had a great graduate internship and learned about Erik Kramer down there from NC State, 20 minutes away.
That's great.
And the ACC and all that. And then when I was at Duke, I had a unique circumstance that led me to call the assistant GM for the Redskins because of things that happened all along the way. He didn't really know me. I didn't really know him. But there was something the Duke sports information director had to find out about a former Duke athlete, Mike Curtis, who played a year at the end of his career for Duke. Or for the Redskins. He was a great athlete.
Okay. Yeah. For the Colts. Right.
And then that led me to the job with the Redskins, which led me to a job back in Pittsburgh with the original USFL team.
Yeah.
And the DeBartolo family owned that team. Wow. And to this day, I'm friendly with Eddie Jr., who was as good an owner as there ever was. Just ask any 49er.
Or people that watch the 49ers and would love to win one, like me.
Yeah. And Eddie's in the Hall of Fame. And then that led to me coming to Detroit in 1985, hearing great things from people that I knew in the business about Mr. Ford and the Ford family. And to be able to stay with the Lions organization for 36 years is the absolute exception in our profession, both as players, coaches, front office. That doesn't happen. And the best part of that is the journey that we're talking about.
And eventually it seems that application led to a certain phone call.
It did.
From the Hall of Fame.
It did. So where did it start? You know, my 89-year-old Italian mother had that instinct. Moms know best, right?
No.
And I've absolutely thought more, the past few months about what would have happened if my mom didn't wake me up to fill out that application. God only knows. So, but it's been amazing. And I don't have the words to describe how appreciative I am for everybody that helped me along the way.
You've made me tear up here listening to your recollections of how all that transpired. And I think you're right. So many of us in life can take the turn that goes left, take the turn that goes right.
Right.
And because of that decision, life goes a certain way. And it just, for me, this couldn't have happened to a better and more deserving person than yourself. And I was just so taken with the gravity of being there. And, I'll bet you when you filled out that application in high school, there was no way you saw yourself being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
No.
And the link that created. And,
you don't.
But all the people you've touched along the way, this makes perfect sense.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the best parts about Thursday's luncheon was standing there with Dan Fouts.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in high school, he was at the top of the food chain, man. Phenomenal. And finding out how much he knew and respected you. I mean, he's a big fan of yours. Not surprising. And then to have Dan recognize you and Matthew to the entire crowd was goosebumps again. I'm like, gosh, is that phenomenal? Because I know what kind of people you are, and Matthew and Gosder Cherilus and Jim Caldwell and Rod Marinelli are, and all the people. But you're celebrities in this game. And one of the greatest joys I had was to be able to have you recognized and the others, so everybody else in that venue could understand, wow, now I know what you mean when you tell me how, for you guys to share that with me, I'll never be able to truly thank you, what that meant. I tell you what that meant to me.
Well, you have, and you do just by the way you live your life and the way you live your life forever. And I just want to say, thank you for doing this. This is the first of what will be many interviews with interesting people with interesting backgrounds over the years. And I'll say this in meeting your mom. She says, I was eating breakfast, and she comes up and she said, Mike introduces me.
Yeah.
And she says, Bill gave me your book, and I haven't put it down since.
Yeah, he hasn't. And I tell you what, she has become such a sports fan. And I mean, she loves you. She's known about you forever. And I got to share this story because I reminded Matthew of it. So I'm guessing this was around 2012. We had the good year here in 11.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew was signed up to do a radio show the following year. And I wasn't really in support of it, to be honest with you. But, Matthew's agent thought it was a good idea. I gave my opinion, and I'm all for publicity for my guys, but I'm also all for it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Okay. And my opinion was he shouldn't do it. Okay. I said that because I believed it. I meant it. So 2012, for any number of reasons, we didn't have a very good year. So the weekly interviews were more like an inquisition than an interview. You've been there, you're the quarterback.
Yeah.
And it was extreme, but Matthew handled it so professionally, like you always did. But this one, I think the interviews were on Monday or Tuesday. So I went over to see my parents who had moved to Michigan. And my mom, God bless her, she said, Billy, I need to talk to you about something. I heard Matthew today, and that guy was terrible. Why does he treat him so mean? I don't understand that. Why do you allow him to go on that show? And so she was all fired up. And Matthew, got such a kick out of that. And having them both there just, reignites some of those wonderful memories, and so many. Yeah.
Well, that's, again, I think you were saying your mom's turned into a sports fan, a football fan.
Yeah.
I think it's really, football seems to be, or any sport, is just a vehicle. It's really life.
It is. It is. Yeah. And when people over the years, and you've heard it, Erik, we've all heard it. Well, it's just a game, what's the big deal? And then you also hear it a lot more, perhaps understood, but not in the context that it should be. When stadiums have issues in a city when teams have issues in cities with a stadium or wherever, and the opposition will downplay it. Sports is the greatest uniter in our society by every measure. And I felt it now. I certainly felt it when you were leading us to 2 division titles in 91 and 93. But it was different back then when you're in the heat of the moment, when you're working. It was more of an internal pride and factor than external. But, since I retired from the Lions, I've been working for the NFL as a national game rep and every week. And I was able to work the Lions' first playoff game since you played for the team. After the 2023 season against the Rams.
Right.
And Matthew, how ironic, right? Oh my gosh.
Who played great that game.
He played fantastic.
Yep.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? He was right there.
Yeah.
So in my NFL role, I can leave the stadium, a lot sooner than I did in my PR role. Because in PR, you're there 3-4 hours before kickoff, you leave 3 or 4 hours after. Everybody's gone the whole show. Yeah. But in the new role, I'm able to leave about 15 minutes after the game and 20 minutes. And I'm walking out, and there were still 10,000 people in the stadium that didn't want to leave. And then I go out into that mass of humanity, and it's one of the things I'll never forget. Just the pure joy of all those fans wearing all those jerseys. And yes, some were still wearing their Erik Kramer number 12 jersey, and seeing the absolute love and passion they all shared. And some are singing, some are cheering. The fight song breaks out. There's cries, there's tears, there's joy, there's cheers. It was so remarkable. But what it said is what we all know: the impact sports can have on a community, and the impact you guys, the players, can have on those fans. And I just thank God that I've been able to be a part of it for so long, and meet people like yourself. And there's a million other people I could talk about, but like I said, and if we have time, this can be edited out, but I got to tell the people one story about Erik that I want everybody to know. So obviously after the 93 season, when Erik leads us to another division championship, and we have a tough playoff game against Green Bay, coulda, shoulda, woulda, the last minute touchdown pass by Brett Favre to Sterling Sharp beat us. And so you proved to everybody those last 4 games that, okay, here we go. We got a quarterback, we of foundation, and we're going to be a factor the next few years. We still had Lomas, still had Kevin Glover, all of that. And
great
so
team.
a great team, not a good team, a great team. Yeah. And inexplicably, the Lions didn't offer you a contract. You were a free agent. And, my head explodes. But then, understandably, the Bears do. And it was a life-changing contract that anybody would have signed. Yeah. You signed that contract. So here I am with the ultimate emotional reaction, one from a team standpoint, because what are we going to do? And what we did ultimately didn't work. But perhaps even more so from a father standpoint, because my son, Billy, you were his, he loved you. He still does. Yeah. And you were his guy. And those Saturday walkthroughs when I'd bring the boys in and you would make time for them, Billy and Chris. And so Billy adored you. Chris was a little younger, but he still liked Erik a lot. Yep. Yeah. And so I'm driving to the house and I'm in one of those moments where, okay, how am I going to explain to Billy what just happened? Because he's 5.5 years old, I think. And I know it's going to be devastating. I know it was devastating. Hoping he hadn't heard the news, but he had. And I get to the house and the phone rings, I think, right as I come in. And my ex-wife hands me the phone. Or no, it rings and I hear her say, Erik. And I think you're calling me because it has to do with media or whatever. She says, oh, he didn't want to talk to you. He wants to talk to Billy. And you guys must have spent 20 minutes on the phone. And to this day, talk about emotional that you had the heart, the head to do that to a 5.5-year-old kid who was heartbroken. And to see you two today, there's no doubt, many things, but that had such an impact on you. And now when you come to town, you and Billy go out and leave me back. When you guys talk football, he's a high school coach. Right. But that's why you're part of this, Erik, for little things like that still,
I appreciate that. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, that's like I said, that's just part of the, football or whatever sport we're talking about. That's just the vehicle that we're happy to be doing at the time. Yeah, but really it's about life and the relationships you create while doing it. And I'll leave you with this one thing. You brought back when Matthew Stafford came back and the Rams played in that playoff game, lost, but played a great game, as did the Lions. Yeah. So I was at that game with my girlfriend, Anna, who And so we're walking out from down at the one end zone where that suite is, and we're walking past, and there's a suite where my picture is in front of it. And Anna walks in, and there's still people there, and this is after the game. And she says, "Hey, you people are in Erik Kramer's suite, and he would like you to leave right now." And they go, "Wait a minute, what?" So I walked in, and we took a bunch of pictures. It was just, and that's the great thing about, Detroit, all NFL cities, but Detroit in general.
Yes.
It is specifically that that fan base, and now the Bears, has been waiting for a winner forever. And they remember the history of that team, no matter how far back it goes. And it goes back a long ways. And to be a part of that as a player, and you as an administrator, in the role that you served for so many years and affected so many people, I know for me, I'm touched by connecting with people in that environment, as I'm sure you are. And it's just, I feel very honored to have been a part of that organization for the 4 years I was there. But that's why it's always great for me, because in the 4 years I was there, I was never downtown. We played in Pontiac, and I never one time went downtown. And so now with some of the renovation that's gone down there, and it's not perfect, but it certainly has, a lot has gone into it. And every time I go back, it's what a privilege it is for me to go back. Yeah, it is.
And it's the passion of the fans and the appreciation of the fans as well for what you did and what you are and who you are, and certainly what you're doing now, make our world a better place. And that's not lost on anybody. So,
well, I appreciate it, Bill, and couldn't appreciate, having been there in support of you, and for you coming on today, and all the work that you've been helping with along the way, as you mentioned, with a couple of projects I have. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Erik. Love you.
All right. Love you too, buddy.